My wife said she needed to explore a life bigger than ours and expected me to understand. I didn't resist. I transferred my savings, closed joint accounts legally, and secured my position. She reached out when bigger meant uncertain. I need you to understand something, and I need you to not make this harder than it has to be. Those were the first words she said to me on a Tuesday morning. Not good morning. Not I love you. Not even my name. Just that, a warning dressed up as a request. I remember the mug in my hand, the coffee still steaming, the way the light came through the kitchen window and landed on the side of her face like she was already somewhere else. She looked calm. That was what hit me first, not the words, but the calm. For months of a version of her that was being quietly constructed in a room I was never invited into. She's helped me realize a lot of things, Mia continued. About my potential. About what I've been sacrificing to maintain stability. Stability, I said, the words sounding strange out loud. Yes. You're describing our life as something you've been sacrificing for. She didn't flinch. I'm describing what it's felt like from the inside. I want to be honest about what I felt in that moment. Because the easy version of this story is to say I was devastated. And I was. But underneath the devastation was something sharper and quieter. A kind of clarity, like a lens being slowly brought into focus. Because here is what I was actually hearing. She had been planning this for at least 4 months. She had sought outside counsel without mentioning it to me. She had framed our life, the house, the accounts, the years, the shared history, as a constraint on her potential. And now she was sitting across from me at our kitchen table telling me she needed to be free of it. And she was doing so with the expectation that I would understand, that I would be gracious, that I would make it easy. What are you asking me for exactly? I said. I'm asking you to not fight me on this. I'm not fighting you on anything, I said. I'm asking you to be mature about it. There it was. That word. Mature. The word people use when they want compliance disguised as emotional growth. What she meant was, I'm asking you to absorb this quietly so that I can move forward without the inconvenience of your feelings. I understood. I said nothing. She talked for another 20 minutes. I listened. She talked about a woman she had met at a conference 8 months ago. A woman named Diane who had walked away from her marriage at 36, moved to another city, built a consulting practice from scratch, and was now thriving. She talked about a trip she had already been researching, 2 months in Portugal and Spain. She talked about a co-working space downtown she had visited twice without mentioning it. She talked about a version of herself she felt she was on the edge of becoming. She did not ask me a single question about how I was receiving any of this. She did not ask how I felt. She did not ask what I needed. She asked me to understand, and she asked me to not make it hard. When she finished, she looked at me with the expression of a person waiting to be told they'd done a brave thing. I looked back at her and said, okay, just that. Okay. She blinked. Okay, she repeated. Okay. That's all you have to say? No, I said. But I'll say the rest after I've thought. She seemed unsatisfied. I think she had expected either an argument, which she was prepared for, or tearful understanding, which she preferred. What she had not expected was this. The still water. The surface with nothing on it. I went to work that day. I sat through 3 meetings and retained almost nothing from any of them. I came home to find her on the phone in the bedroom, laughing at something, the door half closed. I made dinner. She came out, thanked me, ate, and went back to whatever she'd been doing. I washed the dishes. I went to bed. She came in later, lay down, said goodnight. I said goodnight. I did not sleep. I stared at the ceiling for most of the night and did what I had always done when I needed to think clearly. I separated the emotional from the practical. The emotional would have to wait. The practical could not. Because what I had understood from that morning's conversation, what she may not have fully considered, was that a bigger life costs money. And we shared money. And money, once shared and then separated under the wrong circumstances, can destroy people. I had watched it happen to my older brother. I had watched his ex-wife, not a villain, just a person who had also decided she wanted something different, walk away with a financial arrangement that left him rebuilding from 41. I was not going to be rebuilt from 34. The next morning I called my brother, not to vent, not to complain, to ask for the name of the attorney he'd used after the fact. He gave it to me without asking why. He just said, don't wait as long as I did. I called the attorney that afternoon from my car in the parking garage at work. Her name was Renata. She had been practicing family law for 19 years. She was not warm or cold. She was efficient and thorough, which is exactly what I needed. I explained the situation. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "Has she filed anything yet?" "No." "Has she retained anyone?" "Not that I know of." "Then you have a window. Use it carefully and legally. The goal right now is documentation and positioning, not aggression." I wrote that down. Documentation and positioning. Here is what I did over the next 3 weeks. I want to be specific because I want this to be understood. None of it was retaliatory. None of it was designed to harm her. All of it was legal. All of it was done on the advice of counsel. And all of it was something I should have had in place years before any of this happened. First, I opened a personal checking account at a bank where we had no existing relationship. I had been depositing my paychecks into our joint account for 6 years. I changed my direct deposit to the new account. This was legal. This was also, according to Renata, one of the most important things I could do immediately. Second, I transferred my personal savings, money I had saved before we were married, money I had received from my grandfather's estate, money that was documentably mine, into the new account. Renata walked me through exactly what could be moved without creating legal exposure. I moved only what was mine. I left the joint account intact. I did not drain it. I did not touch her deposits. I moved mine. Third, I pulled together every document I could find. Tax returns, bank statements, investment account records, the mortgage paperwork, the deed, my retirement account information. I scanned everything and stored it in an encrypted file. Renata said, "In a divorce, the person with organized documentation wins the first 3 months of negotiations before either side even speaks." I organized everything. Fourth, I had a conversation with the HR department at my company about updating my beneficiary designations. This was something I had been meaning to do for years and never had. I had Mia listed as sole beneficiary on everything. I updated them to my brother. This was my legal right. I did it quietly and without announcement. Fifth, I stopped contributing to the joint savings account. I sent Mia a text, brief, factual, letting her know I had changed my direct deposit and would be managing my finances separately going forward, given the direction of our conversation last Tuesday. She read it. She didn't respond for 4 hours. When she did, she said, "That's fine. I was going to do the same." That response told me everything I needed to know about how far along her planning had actually been. She came to me that evening looking less composed than she had on Tuesday. "I just want to make sure we're doing this civilly," she said. "I intend to," I said. "I don't want to fight over things." "Neither do I. I'm going to reach out to someone about starting the process." "That's your right," I said. "I've already spoken to someone." The flicker again. Shorter this time. More controlled. But I caught it. "Okay," she said. "Good. That's good. That means we can be adults about this." Adults. Mature. Understand. She had a vocabulary for what she wanted me to be. I was simply choosing to be it in a different way than she had planned. The next 2 weeks were some of the strangest of my life. We were still living in the same house, still moving around each other in the kitchen in the morning, still saying goodnight. But something had shifted fundamentally in the architecture of what we were to each other. She had started spending evenings on her laptop at the kitchen table with a kind of focused energy I hadn't seen from her in years. I had started going to bed earlier, reading, thinking. Her friend Qley came over one Saturday afternoon. I had always liked Qley in the abstract. She was sharp, funny, honest. But I had also always been aware that Qley was the kind of friend who told Mia what she wanted to hear wrapped in language that made it sound like wisdom. I made coffee, said hello, and went to work in the garage. I heard them through the window, not enough to make out words, but enough to catch the rhythm. Mia's voice urgent and explaining, Qley's voice warm and affirming. I went back to what I was doing. About a week after that, Mia came to me with a number. She had had her first meeting with her attorney. The number was what she believed her share of the marital assets to be. It was not unreasonable on its face, but it included 2 things I had already documented as premarital assets: a portion of my savings that predated our marriage and a small investment account seeded by my grandfather's estate. These were not marital assets under our state's laws. I knew this because Renata had told me. I sent the documentation to Renata the same afternoon. She confirmed, we had a strong case for exclusion. I tell this part not to score points. I tell it because it was the moment I understood fully what was happening. Mia was not just seeking freedom. Mia was seeking a funded freedom. She wanted the bigger life. And she had anticipated that some portion of the financial foundation for that life would come from this process. I do not say this with bitterness. I say it as a fact that clarified everything. There was a version of me, The version from 6 years ago, maybe even the version from 3 months before that Tuesday morning, who would have given her whatever she asked for. Not because it was fair, but because I was conflict avoidant. Because I had a deep and deeply stupid belief that being easy to deal with made you a good person. Because I had spent years prioritizing her comfort over my own position. That version of me would have looked at the number she presented and said, "Is this what you need?" Then yes. That version of me was no longer running this. The negotiations, and I'll call them that, because that's what they were, lasted about 6 weeks. Renata was exceptional. She was clear without being aggressive. She documented our position thoroughly. She fought for the exclusion of my premarital assets, and she won it cleanly. She ensured that the split of the marital home would be handled by appraisal and buyout or sale, not by one of us simply absorbing the other's share. She protected my retirement accounts. She protected my ability to move forward without being financially decimated. At no point did she advise me to do anything retaliatory or underhanded. At no point did I try to. The house sold 3 months later. We had agreed to list it after the buyout math didn't work in either direction. I found an apartment. She found one too, in a different neighborhood, closer to the life she was assembling. On the day I moved my things out, she wasn't there. She had gone somewhere. I didn't ask where, and I was glad for the absence. I packed what was mine, left what was hers, and handed my key to the real estate agent. I drove to my new apartment. I sat on the floor because I didn't have furniture yet. I ordered a pizza. I ate it alone. And I felt, and this surprised me, not grief exactly, more like ground, like something solid finally underfoot. The months after were unremarkable in the way that rebuilding always is at the start. Quiet evenings, long weekends, learning to cook for one without making too much, learning to fall asleep in silence. I bought furniture slowly, piece by piece, choosing things I actually liked rather than things that compromised between two people's tastes. I went back to the gym. I picked up a habit of long Sunday morning walks that I hadn't done since before the marriage. I called my brother more. I started a side project at work that I had been putting off for 2 years because it required time I hadn't had. I was not happy in any dramatic sense, but I was functional in a way that felt like the beginning of something. I heard things about her, occasionally, through Qley, who had remained loosely in my orbit through a mutual friend. Not gossip, more like weather reports. She had taken the trip to Portugal. She had started freelancing. She was subletting her apartment and staying with a friend for a few months while she figured out what came next. Each of these updates arrived at me with less charge than the one before. The first time she reached out directly was 4 months after the divorce was finalized. A text message. Short. "Hey, is this still a good number for you?" I stared at it for a while. There are messages that are simple and there are messages that are door-knocking. The kind where the words on the surface are just the pretense for the actual question underneath, which is, "Will you answer if I knock?" This was a door knock. I waited a day. Then I replied, "Yes." She called 2 days later. I let it ring once, twice, then picked up. "Hi," she said. "Hi," I said. There was a pause. "How are you?" she asked. "Good," I said. "You?" Another pause. Longer. And then she said, "Honestly, I've been having a hard few months." I didn't say anything. "The freelancing is slower than I expected," she continued. "The apartment situation is temporary, and I need to sort that out by the end of the month. I'm figuring things out." "Okay," I said. "I'm not calling to ask you for anything," she added quickly. I wanted to hear your voice, I think." "Okay," I said again. We talked for about 30 minutes. She asked about my job, my family, whether I was still in the same apartment. I answered each question briefly and accurately. She told me more about Portugal. The trip had been beautiful, she said, but she'd come back feeling more uncertain, not less. "I thought it would clarify things," she said. "Did it?" I asked. "Not the way I expected." She laughed softly, but it was the laugh of someone who is embarrassed by their own honesty. "The life coach," I said, still talking to her. A pause. "We ended the sessions a couple months ago. She moved her practice online, and it just didn't feel right anymore." "I see." "She meant well," Mia said. I wanted someone to confirm what I'd already decided." And she did. And that felt like wisdom at the time. I let that sit. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. She took a moment. "Because you deserve to hear it, I think," she said. "You never made me feel like a villain. I know I put you through a lot, and you handled it so quietly. I kept waiting for you to get angry." "I did get angry," I said. "I know, but not at me, not out loud. Getting angry at you wasn't going to help either of us." Most people would have, she said. I'm not most people. Another pause. Softer this time. No, she said. You're not. I want to be careful here, because this is the part of the story where it would be easy to read sentiment into the moment. To read softening, maybe. The beginning of something being rebuilt. I don't want to tell that story because it isn't what happened. What happened is that I listened to her. I heard her. I held space for the fact that she was a complicated person who had made a complicated decision and was now living in the complicated consequences of it. And I felt, not coldness, not warmth exactly, but something more like the steady acknowledgement of reality. This is who she is. This is what happened. This is where we are. None of those things are going back. She asked if we could get coffee. I said I'd think about it. She said okay. She said she'd appreciate it. She said good night. I said good night. I called my brother the next morning. Not for advice. He'd given me all his advice already. I called because I trusted him to tell me what I actually needed to hear rather than what was easiest to say. I told him about the call. He listened. When I finished, he said, "How did you feel after you hung up?" "Tired," I said. "Good tired or bad tired?" I thought about it. Neither. Just aware. Of what? Of how much I'd built. In 4 months. Without noticing. He was quiet for a second. Then he said, "Don't give it away." I took that seriously. Because what my brother understood, and what I had come to understand in my own way through the previous months, was that the thing I had built was not the apartment or the savings account or the furniture I'd chosen alone. The thing I had built was a self that was not defined by its relationship to her. A center of gravity that was my own. That sounds like a self-help sentence, and I apologize for that. But it is the most accurate way I know to describe what had happened. Before that Tuesday morning, I had been, without fully knowing it, a person whose internal orientation was toward managing her experience. Making sure she was okay. Making sure things were smooth. Making sure I was acceptable to the version of the future she was imagining. In the months since, without the pull of that, I had begun to orient toward something else. Toward my own sense of what mattered. And I found, somewhat to my surprise, that it was a stronger pull than anything I had felt in a long time. The coffee happened. 3 weeks after that phone call. A Saturday morning, a cafe equidistant between our neighborhoods. She was there when I arrived. She looked different. Not worse, not better, different. Smaller. Somehow, though the word sounds unkind and isn't meant to be. Like something that had been very bright had been turned down to a more sustainable level. "You look good," she said when I sat down. "Thank you," I said. "I mean it. I know." We talked for an hour and a half. It was, and this is strange to say, one of the most honest conversations we had ever had. Not warm in the way of the early years. Not the comfort of familiarity. But honest in a way that our marriage, for all of its years, had often not been. She told me she had spent a long time believing that the life she wanted was somewhere ahead of her, around a corner, accessible if she could just get free of whatever was holding her back. She told me that in Portugal, walking through a city she had imagined for years, she had sat in a square on a perfect evening and felt, instead of the expansion she'd expected, a strange and specific loneliness. Not because the city was wrong, but because she had imagined sharing it. I listened. I did not say what a less evolved version of me might have said. I did not say, "You had someone to share it with." I just listened. "I'm not asking to go back," she said quietly. "I know that's not on the table." "It isn't," I said. "I know." She looked at her coffee. "I think I just wanted you to know that I understand more now. What I was asking you to absorb. What I expected you to just accept." "You were asking me to fund your exploration," I said. She flinched. "Yes," she said. "Partly. And when it turned out the funding had been redirected," I said, "the exploration got harder." "That's fair," she said. "I'm not saying it to be cruel." "I know you're not." She looked up. "I always knew you would take care of yourself." That's the thing I didn't say out loud, but always knew. I guess I expected it to look different when it happened. What did you expect it to look like? She thought about it. Anger, maybe. Confrontation. Not. All of that quiet competence. I'm not sure anger would have helped either of us. No, she agreed. It wouldn't have. There was a pause. Not uncomfortable. Not comfortable. Just honest. "Are you happy?" she asked. I thought about it the way the question actually deserved. Not the reflexive, yes, fine, of someone being polite. Not the equally reflexive, no, of course not, of someone needing to be seen as wounded. "I'm building something," I said. I don't know if happy is the right word yet, but I'm moving in a direction I chose. That feels important. She nodded. "That's more than I can say right now," she said. We parted outside the cafe. She said it was good to see me. I said the same. She reached out and touched my arm briefly, not a hug, just a touch. And then she turned and walked in the direction of her neighborhood. I stood there for a moment and watched her go. Not with longing, not with satisfaction, with something more like the feeling you get at the end of a very long book. The recognition that the story you've been living through has arrived somewhere, and that the somewhere is quieter than the middle of it felt. I went home, made lunch, went for a long walk, called nobody, needed to call nobody. Over the following months, she and I remained in loose, occasional contact. A text here and there. She sorted out her housing situation, found steadier freelance work, rebuilt her footing. I completed the side project at work that I'd started. I traveled, once to the Pacific Northwest, once to visit my brother across the country. I did not date anyone for the rest of that year, not because I was waiting for anything, but because I wasn't ready and I was finally honest enough with myself to know it. What I want to say, and then I will stop, because this is where the story ends, is this. There is a version of how that Tuesday morning could have gone, where I cried and asked her what I'd done wrong and tried to negotiate for a different outcome, where I said yes to whatever number she put on the table because it felt like love to give it, where I let the shared financial life dissolve into whatever shape made it easiest for her to move. That version of me would have been, by her metrics, mature, understanding, not making it hard. Instead, I made a different choice. I did not fight. I did not rage. I did not make a scene or send a single hostile message or do a single thing that wasn't either advised by counsel or simply self-protective. But I also did not make it easy in the way she meant. I made it clean. I made it legal. I made it fair. And I made it in a direction that preserved enough of me that there was a me left to rebuild from. That is the thing no one tells you when a marriage ends, or when anything ends. The grief is real. The loss is real. But underneath the grief and the loss is a question that does not have the decency to wait until you're ready for it. Who are you when this isn't the center of you anymore? And the terrifying and eventual answer is, more than you thought, different than you expected, and, given enough of the quiet and unglamorous work of rebuilding, capable of choosing a direction that is fully, entirely your own. She told me once, during one of our later conversations, that she had expected me to beg, not literally, but she had expected some version of please don't do this, some version of I'll change whatever you need changed, some version of the negotiation where she named the price and I found a way to pay it. I didn't give her that, not out of pride, not out of punishment, but because begging, at that point, would have been a lie, and I was done living inside things that were too small for me too. I just chose a different direction to grow in. One last thing. A few weeks ago, nearly a year after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Diane. The woman from the conference. The one Mia had talked about that Tuesday morning. The one who had left her marriage at 36 and was thriving. I was at a mutual friends gathering and she was there, pleasant, sharp, clearly someone who had built something real after a hard transition. We talked for a while. She asked if I was the ex-husband. I said yes. She said Mia had mentioned me. I asked what she said. Diane smiled. She said you handled everything with more integrity than she deserved. I didn't know what to do with that. So I just said thank you and went to get another drink. Integrity. I don't know if that's the word I'd use. I protected myself. I asked for good counsel and followed it. I moved my money legally. I documented thoroughly. I said okay when I meant it and nothing when I didn't. I built something in the space that opened up. If that's integrity, then fine. But mostly it was just choosing not to disappear. Choosing not to let the thing she wanted, which was a clean exit at my expense, be the thing that defined what came next for me. I chose to be the thing that was still standing after. And I am.